And so our last poem set for study, Home Burial, which is very distinct to all the other poems. Probably Fire and Ice is the other unique poem. We can place possibly three different types of poetry in Frost in that suite we're looking at. His pastoral ruminations after apple picking, mending wall, stopping by woods, and tuft of flowers in one category, and then you have Fire and Ice, which seems to sort of sit in the middle of the whole thing. Then we get to this one, Home Burial, which reads much more like a modern poem. It's, and by terms of what I mean by modern poems, modernism, which is was part of a literary movement stemming from the 20s and 30s, and pushing on into the postmodern era, which is post-World War II. Modernism kind of like threw away the sentiments of lyricism and lyrical type poetry, ballad type poetry, odes, elegies, these kinds of things, and became more forceful, more blunt. The reasons for that are many, of course. We always point to the disaster of World War I, the disaster of the Spanish flu that followed that, and the Great Depression. And so the time of lyricism was seen as rather anachronistic and just out of time, out of step with the way people felt. Home Burial sort of works, brings into play a type of poetry that people like T.S. Eliot and others were pursuing, which leads eventually to the beat poetry and then we get sort of like the modern slam poetry. And that is, it's almost a duologue or a monologue or a dramatic performance. Home Burial very much can be done as a dramatic performance. And I do recommend that at some point maybe you get yourselves into pairs and work on that idea of the two characters. Anyway, we look at the title itself first, Home Burial. This gives us a sense, of course, that it is immediately something internal, closed into this family or this home or this house. It's a very private moment that we're going into, someone's private and deepest sort of part of their world. This is not a public burial. This is not a burial in a graveyard. This is not a burial in a churchyard. This is not a wake for this little child. It's a private, quiet home burial. And in fact, when we learn about the burial, we learn that it is just the father who furiously dug the grave, placed the child into the grave, and then covered it up, and then went about his day. And this, of course, is what the mother finds completely offensive. So you'll note as you read it, there's that lack of rhythmical device, that lack of rhyme. It's written as this forced duologue. It's thrown onto that page. It's very forceful, almost aggressive poetry, as opposed to his other poems that we've studied. He saw her from the bottom of the stairs before she saw him. She was starting down, looking back over her shoulder at some fear. She took a doubtful step and then undid it to raise herself and look again. Look at that opening sentence, or two sentences there. They're very, very sort of active and aggressive. Okay, it's about the man sees the woman on top of the stairs and she's about to come down. His gaze forces her to freeze and stop and change her perspective. He's watching her, watching something else. Okay, and then advancing toward her. And the word advancing, he spoke, advancing toward her, reminds us of the position that these two people have in this relationship. We get a sense that it possibly has been aggressive. We don't know if it's been violent, but he has been very aggressive and very forceful. Her reactions to him give us that situation. What is it you see from up there always? For I want to know. This is the imperative. He's asking almost as an order. You will tell me what is going on here. And she changes her movement. She turned and sank upon her skirts at that, and her face changed from terrified to dull. So it's interesting that she was terrified here at his coming along, and it goes to dull. She almost loses any sense of emotional connection with this man. The terror has disappeared. It has gone to a numbness. Turned and sank upon her skirts. We get a reminder of her femininity there. Therefore, she is in rather a weaker position in terms of her physicality. Okay, she's in a stronger position in terms of dramatic performance. If you were to do this in a drama, she is in a high status position. She's on top of the stairs, but her costume creates that low status sensibility in terms of gender politics. If you understand what I'm getting at it there, what Frost was trying to do. And he said to gain time, "What is it you see?" Mounting until she cowered under him. "I will find out now. You must tell me, dear." This is the second time he's demanded. Second time. So he's relentless. And I will find out now. You will tell me. I will find out now. It doesn't matter that you won't answer me. I will work out a way to get you to answer me. And this is very threatening. It's very vicious and it's very violent. She in her place refused him any help. With the least stiffening of her neck and silence, she let him look. Sure that he wouldn't see, blind creature, and a while he didn't see, but at last murmured, "Oh." And "Oh, what is it?" "What?" she said. "Just that I see. You don't," she challenged. "Tell me what it is." So then she actually challenges him back. "You tell me what you think I see. You wouldn't know. You don't understand." And this interesting metaphor here, blind creature, referring to what she feels is his emotional sort of restriction that's going on here. "Tell me what it is. The wonder is I didn't see it once. I never noticed it from here before. I must be wanted to it. That's the reason. The little graveyard where my people are, so small, the window frames the whole of it, not so much larger than a bedroom, is it? There are 3 stones of slate and 1 of marble and broad-shouldered little slabs there in the sunlight on the side hill. We haven't to mind those, but I understand it is not the stones, but the child's mound." So we get his very, very sort of prescriptive or descriptive version of what he's seeing, an absoluteness. But he does create some kind of little allusion there to window frames, the whole of it, not much larger than a bedroom, to the intimacy of this family environment and the intimacy that they possibly once had at this point. But she alarmingly sort of regresses from that. Don't, she cried. 4 don'ts. Now, that absolute repetition there goes beyond that third point. And we always think about the rule of 3, words from Hamlet when he's talking to Polonius. Well, here, don't. The 4th don't is very, very, very emotional and has that sort of response from her that gets to him in a way that sort of works around his aggression. "Don't," she cried. It's a complete plea to leave it alone. She withdrew, sinking from beneath his arm that rested on the banister, and slid downstairs and turned on him with such a daunting look. He said twice over before he knew himself, "Can't a man speak of his own child he's lost?" We don't see it repeated in the poem, but we're told that he says this twice, this second question, okay, which is a rhetorical sort of movement back from that imperative of what is it, what do you see, what do you see? And then he's like, can't I grieve? Can't I do this? Can't I be this person? But she has gotten away from him. She's actually managed to physically get herself out of his grasp. Here we are, shrinking from beneath his arm. So he's obviously standing over her at this point, and there's this aggressive stance. And she's got around, she turns on him, and she gives him this look of absolute pure hatred, really. And he says, "Well, why? Why can't I grieve this way?" And he's clearly doesn't understand her sensibilities. "Not you." "Oh, where's my hat?" "I don't need it. I must get out of here. I must get air. I don't know rightly whether any man can." "Amy," and that's her response to him, that I must get out. "Amy, don't go to someone else this time. Listen to me. I won't come down the stairs." He sat fixed, his chin between his fists. So you get this sort of moment of tension in his body. He's very tense, and that reminds us of his violence. There's something I should like to ask you, dear. So the two of them are getting into this argument. What have we got going on at this point in terms of discovery? Well, what you have here is a complete separation of the married circumstance of these people. They have lost the ability to know each other. So they're refusing two things. They're refusing to discover each other's sense of actual loss and how to grieve. They don't understand how each creature is able to grieve in certain different ways. And that causes a real disparity between these two. And it shows us that if we don't understand at depth each other, we tear each other apart. Beyond mending walls and beyond apple picking and all this, this is at the crux of the human condition. You don't know how to ask it. This duologue goes on, this argument. Help me then. Her fingers moved the latch for all reply. My words are nearly always an offence. I don't know how to speak of anything so as to please you, but I might be taught, I should suppose. I can't see how. A man must partly give up being a man with women folk. So here, he's playing the victim card, and then he's playing the gender card. We get this almost misogynistic saying that men, when they live with women, are no longer completely men. They are changed and transformed, weakened by the woman. And so her asking him to grieve the way she does is, to him, seems unmanly and ungainly. And this goes right back to great literature, as you know. The idea of grief from when we study Hamlet has the same concept of what it means to grieve and be a man. We could have some arrangement by which I bind myself to keep hands off anything special you're a mind to name. You could tell me what I'm not allowed to actually bring up in a conversation. Though I don't like such things twixt those that love. There's our wall again. If we put up a metaphorical barrier between us about what we're allowed to talk about, we destroy further our relationship with each other because we lack the ability to communicate really well, with language and communication. Again, this will play out when we do Orwell's 84, because he talks about the fact that the minute you actually remove something from a conversation, you remove the ability to think about the conversation. But two that can't live together with them. She moved the latch a little. She's still down at the door. She can escape. But he holds her. He holds her back with his conversation. Don't go. Don't carry it to someone else. 3 don'ts. 1, 2, 3. Don't. Do not. These are imperatives again, orders. He's not pleading with her. He's telling her, don't carry it to someone else at this time. There's a sense, possibly it's the second time that someone else has been mentioned. So there's possibly been a situation in this relationship where she has seeked out another person for her solace and so forth. And this is problematic again in this relationship. Tell me about it if it's something human. Let me into your grief. I'm not so much unlike other folks as your standing there apart would make me out. People have told them that he's rather stoic in his grieving. Teach me how to grieve. If you find this to be a problem, then teach me. This is in direct contradiction, of course, to his line further here. A man must partly give up being a man with women folk. And then down here, he's sort of contradicting himself. No wonder she doesn't trust him and she's not wanting to talk to him, because he's a little bit all over the place in terms of his line of argument, in terms of his dialogue. It's pretty problematic in that way. Give me my chance. I do think you overdo it a little. What it was brought you up to think it the thing to take your mother loss of a first child so inconsolably in the face of love. You'd think this memory might be satisfied. And so it gets, pretty awful. He treats her pretty badly in that sentence. There you go, sneering now. I'm not. You make me angry. I'll come down to you. God, what a woman. And it's come to this. A man can't speak of his own child's death. So he feels that he's the victim in this situation, as you can see. He's had a go at it here. Take your loss of a first child so inconsolably. And then she gets quite angry at him. And this, oh, no, I'm making you angry. You can't, because you don't know how to speak. If you had any feelings, you that dug with your own hand, how could you? His little grave. She's questioning now the very fact that he was able to actually dig the grave of his own child. And we'll get more to that in part 2.